JCC presentation. Who are we missing? Ian is here. He's in my office making a phone call. Okay. All right, so I just wanted to say a couple things since we've been talking a lot this year about governance and vision and mission. This is our opportunity to hear what the community thinks about some of the things we've been talking about and why that mission and vision is important. So Coach Lalone, who was my old soccer coach, is going to run you through the results. Think about how this fits in with what we talked about with Christy, what we've been talking about through the building process, all those big things for our community. A lot of the answers are right here. Communities pay big money for this. I went on Facebook, one of my local government groups, and I asked, communities that have done a survey what they've paid. It's usually between $15,000, $20,000, and $50,000 depending on the community. These guys are doing it for us because they're here right in our backyard. So this is really valuable data that can help us make big decisions over the next few years. So with that, I'll turn it over to Coach Lalone. He'll take it from here.
Thanks, Ryan. $50,000.
Yeah, I knew that was a bad
Oh my God, Ryan, I can't focus now.
Don't get your hopes up.
So we got Ryan referring to me as coach, and I've got to zap with this. My former coach right over there, I played baseball years ago for Mr. Burns.
Not very well, but he was
If baseball would have had yellow cards and red cards like soccer does, this guy would have been, I think, getting a whole lot of them. Not very well coaching or not very well baseball by me?
You were an excellent baseball.
Okay, that's what I was waiting to hear, yes. So, thank you for welcoming us, and it's great to come here each March and see so many familiar faces. And I want to make sure that I introduce for you, if you don't remember, or if I never have in the past, but over here's Larry Danforth, works with me at the Center for Community Studies. This year we decided it's just going to be me who presents. We're not going to swap back and forth because in about 3 weeks Larry has to do this on his own. We're doing the same thing, rolling out the study in St. Lawrence County, and I can't go up, so fair is fair, I have to do the talking today. So Larry is our research coordinator, another math professor at the college. And then we have Andy Draper, who's starting to, this is a good thing. We're getting probably a combination of what you and I were talking about, that I've been there 35 years, and we're having a whole lot of business and work that we knew we needed some more help. So Andy's another statistics professor that we're bringing along and getting involved. I'm really happy to have his input. And then, like always, I try to bring some students, and we represented all 3 counties today. So we have Monica Reed Monica, I know you're from the northern part of the county. Where are you from?
Natural Bridge.
Natural Bridge. So we have our Lewis County student, Monica, who I already gave them a heads up. If you want to ask a question to get the truth, later on, you got 3 sources here. But Monica spent some time on the telephones, maybe speaking with some of you. And then over here from St. Lawrence County, from Hammond, we have Amanda Pease, who has done the same thing. And I'm hoping Amanda will go up when Larry goes to St. Lawrence County next month. And then we have from Jefferson County, from over there by Chaumont, we have Ryan Albertine. I don't know if I ever asked, are you connected to Daryl Albertine? Didn't know that. Didn't know whether that's a positive or negative. I bring them over, but so anyways, we have 3 students that we brought along because they never get to see this part of it. They get to be a part of the design at the beginning. With all the questions that Ryan and the department had to send to us, they get to be a part of the data collection, the data analysis, and then they write up studies for me. But they never get a chance to see leaders like you using this. So what I want to give you the heads up about is basically this is carved into 3 parts tonight. 3 parts, that's about half the number of parts you might be accustomed to me talking about. So this should be quick and facilitate and allow for you to, you don't have to just ask me a question if you have one. You certainly can dialogue amongst one another or ask Ryan or Eric or any of the other leaders here, that if I don't know what's percolating and the biggest issue. I mean, I can tell you of the issues that we studied, what the residents say you're doing the best on or not the best on. But I don't know what's been coming up around here that you might see a survey question that you interpret in a way that didn't occur to me because I'm from Watertown. So the 3 sections are a very quick, what did we do? A very quick, how did we do it? And then the lion's share, the 80 to 90% of what I want to show you today is what did we find? Because the survey, as you'll see, so I'm going to click through, and I have to give a little bit of, that's who we are. We've been around for 20 years now at the Center for Community Studies. We do all kinds of research. You can see over 150 of them we've done. Right there is the cover to the study. Before you walk out, we have, I know better to give it to Mr. Burns because he'll start just rifling through and not listening. I know how you are. But we have a copy for each one of you that we at the college produce that you can certainly spend more when you have the time. But right there's your cover, and these are the different methodologies we use, and yours you'll see later on the, and there's me, and there's Larry, can't keep us straight. And that's new, Ryan, and that's new thanks to all of you. It has become official that we have, I believe it's official, that we have a sponsorship agreement in place, and somebody has to pay the students, somebody has to pay the pizza, and we certainly don't have a $50,000 budget that we have to cover. But it would be a budget that would be difficult for the college to cover on its own. So Car Freshener gave us an endowment years ago, and the Development Authority, the Northern New York Community Foundation, and you folks give us annual sponsorships to help offset the cost behind this. So every time we have to go through and make sure that we give that, I think Randy Richardson taught me that it's called stewardship that I was just doing right there. So those are the three things. What did we do? How did we do it? And then let's talk about what we found. So what we did is there are 10 sections of survey questions on there. There's no way tonight I'll be able to do all of them with you. There's a picture of our call center, what it looks like. So these are the sections that you're going to see me go through. Yes, there are questions on trail development. Yes, there are questions on, you probably want to see what the results were on that one. And then something about K-12 education. We took some questions that Siena Research Institute had just asked statewide on national news, access to, and trust. We want to know, what do they think the direction that things are heading in your county and country? So those are the things we'll talk about. Here's very quickly our methodology. It has changed this year. It has changed throughout the entire industry. Last Thursday, Monica and Amanda and Ryan as my witnesses, last Thursday I flew down to Manhattan and did a one-day conference with Ipsos wasn't there, but Harris Polls was there, Facebook was there, Siena Research Institute was there. The whole idea that, as we all know, people having landlines in their houses are becoming less and less common. People having a setting on their iPhone that says, if you're not already in my contacts, I'm not even going to let it ring, is becoming more and more common. And people have to adapt. And we did adapt, where now what we have is, if you look right here, 287 of these were done by calling your landlines. Fortunately, from our point of view, Lewis County has very high landline presence compared to other counties, like if you went down to Manhattan now. We did 94 of them on cell phone, and this is the first time ever we've done online invitations, and we did 158 of them online. So what are we following? The next slide is just a little bit of letting you know that we've just become a part of the American Association of Public Opinion Research, and we're the only two-year college in the United States that is, and we're the only SUNY college that is. So what that means is, and I know it's too small for you to read, but we go through and we follow what they say is absolute best standards, and it is becoming recommended. People are testing, people like us, that the results that we got doing it online did not differ greatly from the results we got from calling cell phones or calling landlines. So you merge them all together, we have a representative sample of, let me go back one slide. What I want you to embed in your mind just briefly, is that the sample size was 539. So we have a little bit over 500 people, and the margin of error on this is roughly plus or minus 5%. So that's all it took, Ryan, for the first two sections. We are now at the rest of the time. I don't have anywhere I have to be. I don't know. You guys got to be anywhere soon? You? I don't care. We're good. We'll be here as long as you want, or as short as you want, to talk about what these things might mean. Because what Larry and I did not address in here is we addressed the idea of what's true. We didn't address the idea of how you might go through and implement it and make best data-driven decisions. But we don't have any problem with weighing in as a citizen, weighing in as, hopefully, a leadership role. So what we decided is, out of those 10 sections, we grouped it into 5 groups of findings. There is no question, you're going to see right here at the beginning, and if this ever changed, oh my God, we would all notice it and say, did Lewis County all of a sudden become not rural, safe, pristine, outdoors? So we have a section on the whole quality of life. Then we have new questions this year on agriculture. Mr. Lawrence over here, in a leadership role for Cornell, helped us with forming these questions, along with other members of the county leadership. So we asked some questions. Those didn't come from Larry and I. They didn't come from our students. They came from your leadership. And I have to tell you, I tell you every year, I don't know how well, you might think it's just him barking on and I'm not listening. But please do listen. We do this in 3 counties, and the other 2 counties just do not get involved and do not participate with us. Give us questions you want to learn about, and then utilize the results in any way as well as you guys do. So that's why these came from you. We certainly ought to discuss them today. The economic ones, some of the ones about personal financial situations, some of the ones about availability of good jobs, and then we have put in some political ones, for lack of a better terms, but it's the idea of, I just want to show you, you might remember last year we did it for the first time, some questions that, especially with it being an election year, that we all discuss and are thinking about, how do we feel about these things? Well, let me show you what your community says they feel. And then finally, there are many, many, many that have to do with government services, local government services. So those are the 5 we're going to hit. And so this is beginning with, if I were you and I were training my eyes, I'd be training my eyes on, these are the outdoor ones, the first one. The overall quality of life, we've asked it for 13 years it is now. And you can see that's a little bit of variation from year to year, but essentially 3 out of every 4 rated as excellent or good. Train your eyes over here. Guess what? It's hot. Green is you. That's your color. Green is Lewis County. That's our JCC color. That's Jefferson County, and there's St. Lawrence County. So what would I look at that? Overall quality of life, it continues year after year after year to be a positive type of sentiment in Lewis County. When I go to the next one, it's what is it that they like? Well, clearly this was the highest, one of the highest rated attributes year after year is that about 70% of the people year after year say public outdoor recreational opportunities are excellent or good. Again, look at the other 2 counties. And you can see that you're not way inconsistent. You're right there with what they say in the other 2 counties. Now, what did we ask this year? These 3 came directly from you, from somebody in this room, not me. It was the idea of how would we really describe the types of trail developments that we want to know, what is the attitude amongst the taxpayers around here. This first one is development of non-motorized trails for walking, hiking, and biking. The second one is the conversion of existing railroad beds for either motorized or non-motorized use. And the last one is development of ATV and snowmobile trails. What would I say that says to me? Loud and clear, there's way more support for all 3 than there is opposition. You know, if I did a quick ratio there, 87 to 9 is basically a 10 to 1 ratio. People are 10 times more likely to say I'd support that than oppose. But I'd also look horizontally and say, clearly, the ones that's the non-motorized hiking, walking, and biking has more support. Does anyone in here other than my 3 students remember plus or minus 5%? If I went plus 5% on that 74 and I went minus 5% on that 87, they don't overlap. That is a statistically significant difference. That is the end of the first section on outdoors.
You can go back to the last one for a second.
I absolutely can.
So,
I think. There.
So we were talking about this question before, Joel and I, because we have a trail department here in Lewis County. We spent most of our effort on motorized trail development, but the state spends a lot of money and resources on non-motorized. So it's not that we're not making the investment as a county in non-motorized, because we have a lot of investment in that, but the state's kind of fulfilling that portion. So I don't know, maybe this will make us think about where we should put Jackie's resources next year. What should we be focused on? What do you guys think? No comment? All right, go on.
2 things I took out of that. One of them, he called me Joel, not Coach. And the other one was, that was crickets right there. That was absolutely. So they're thinking about it. So that's outdoor. Agriculture. This is where we have the 6 different potential threats, perceived threats that agriculture could face. And what I see, the scale down here is major threat, minor threat, not a threat. These 2 jump right out. You can't miss it. That those 2 are the biggest. And I'm not saying that this is shocking to you, but it at least helps confirm amongst your constituents. They're thinking the same thing as a tie, 76, 76. It's too expensive to farm now because of things like taxes, small profit margins. And the other one is fear of newer young farmers that will replace the existing farmers. Now, the other end of the spectrum, conflicts between farmers and non-farmers, hardly anyone perceives it as a major threat. Lack of enough local consumers, they don't perceive that as well. Threatened conversion to non-farm use, those things are nowhere near as perceived as these 2 big ones. I don't know, Joe, that speaks to you in any way that was way shocking and unexpected, or kind of confirmatory of?
Confirms a lot of what we hear.
So you're going to be a Monday morning quarterback, huh? You're going to say I knew anyways? Yeah, okay. So, no, I'm just being smart.
Joe, how does that compare with the other counties?
We have not asked that one in the other counties. That's why you don't see them up there, but it's a great question.
So it compares favorably.
I guess. You're trying to sound like my student who hasn't had an exam yet, and they say they still have 100 because they missed a point yet.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'd like to know about the taxes and small profit margin. Couldn't you separate that?
We can separate it.
Question next time around?
Absolutely.
Because not all of it's got to do with taxes.
Right.
Most of it's the profit margins.
Well, what I can tell you confirmatively, and I know I'm not making stuff up here, is absolutely yes to your question. We can separate it. What I don't know is, will it still be 76% if it's two separate questions or not? But Larry, we're going to file that right away. That if you want us to, we will separate it next year. Absolutely. One of the things that happens is when you're writing a survey, whenever you see that word "and," you immediately go, okay, is it a double-barrel question? But you have the other thing that you're trying to do a trade-off of. Every time you split a question into two, the question gets longer and it's harder to keep people on the phone and you have to throw something else out. But that's why we do this and keep coming back year after year. We'd be happy to do that if you remind us to.
Well, maybe we can drop one off the end. That
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's the agriculture, what we asked. Now, there were a few other questions, and this one I thought was wise to put up. We have not done it in the other counties. That's why you don't see a bar graph over here. We have not done it before for you. This is a brand new question, your perception about the use of farmland for solar energy. And you can see that 67% said I have a positive perception about that, as compared to 22% said it's negative what they think about the potential of using farmland for solar energy. So that's a 3-to-1 ratio. I know that this blue is not readable for you. The only reason I put it there is because I want you to realize the real document has every single question on the survey cross-tab by, do men and women differ in their attitudes? Do people of different income levels differ in their attitudes? Do people of different ages? Do people of different education levels? And do people who identify as conservative versus liberal versus neither? So the only reason I put that up there was for you to realize it's there. That potential to drill down deeper is there on every question on it. Now, if you wanted me to read one of those, I'd have to have Larry zoom in for me. So that's the end of what we showed for agriculture. This one I have to say, oftentimes the media will say, Joel, what surprised you? And I have to say that the idea of continued, now remember, this study the data was collected in October. It was collected before what's happened in the last week and a half with the stock market. So back in October when we asked them, I clicked accidentally ahead. We asked them about availability, good jobs. Right there is the excellent or good. Now is 25% through the roof? No. But 25%, you can see the last 3 years at the highest over a big, long 13-year time span. And check out the other two counties. So you can see that I would not see that availability of good jobs has gone off in a big negative direction. I'd say it's been stable and that people in your county are saying, you know what, better than it was 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. 2011 was when it was at the lowest rate. You can see it was down to rate at 10%. That's more than double 10%. So, room for improvement? Yes. But better than it's been for a long time? Yes. The next one was the overall state of the local economy, and that one was interesting because that one you can see the excellent or good. Look at that trajectory for the last 3 years. And people were saying, all right, availability, good jobs. It's about what it was last year, but the overall state of the local economy. This is a perfect example of, did we follow up and say, well, why? Why did you just say fair or poor? No. Why did we not follow up and say why? Because the whole idea of, we've got 55 questions on this survey to ask them why on each one would make it a 55-minute survey. But I want you to realize, even though that's a drop down to 35% right there, look where you are compared to what the other two counties say. It goes without saying that St. Lawrence County people, when we talk to them, are a little bit less positive in general about things. Look at that, poor. That's their most common response in St. Lawrence County, overall state of the local economy, is poor. They're almost, I think that's a little bit more than double the rate that your folks say poor. So, local economics, But when we asked them, this is a question that we stole from John Zogby in 2008. When I had been off working at Zogby, and I asked permission, can we use your question? And what I see right here is we asked them, your personal financial situation, better, same, or worse, look at that, better. So what people have said is on their own personal situation, it's gotten better. That could be due to a 29,000 Dow Jones back in October. It could be, but what you can see is the 3 counties are very similar. Look at these, better, same, worse. They're very similar, but I see a spike that has happened in the last year in your county, where 31% better to 14% worse. If you look back at 2011, 11% said better. It's now gone 31. And look at worse, right there in 2011. That's 30% said worse. Look even further back, 40% said worse. So that gray line of likelihood of somebody in your community to say my personal financial situation has gotten worse has been a trend that has gone in the direction we like to see. So I said 5 sections. I said outdoors, agriculture, and then I said political. The political is, I just want you to see that graph alone has so much information in it. All it is what do you categorize yourself as? And I should have held you hostage right there. I should have asked Mr. Burns, what do you think? More conservatives or more liberals? What would you have said, Ron?
I would have said conservative.
And what we had in our sample is by about a 4-to-1 ratio, 37% to 10%. What's that saying? That's saying 1 out of every 10 people says I consider myself a liberal. But what's hard to ignore is the most common thing is to say I'm neither of those. You can see that's 37, that's 10, it heads up to 47. Here's my other 53. So when you look at your county, they're 4 times more likely to say conservative than liberal. But the most common thing they say is, I'm in the middle. I'm not going to call myself one of those. So we asked a series of 12 questions. You might remember them from last year. That's too small. Don't worry, it's going to get bigger in a second. But what you have is we were asked to ask this question. Statement A, small farms are important for the local community economy and should be protected by government. Small farms are small businesses and should be subject to market conditions and not protected by government. That's a new one this year. I can't show you a trend. I can't show you another county. But Second Amendment, the gun control question. So if you looked at these, this is saying protect small farms, 74 by government, only 22 say don't. If you're saying the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to bear arms and so on, 68% pro-gun rights, only 28% pro-gun control. I don't know that that would have shocked you. This column is what's the difference? 68, 28, 40% more likely. Yep. And then we go to climate change. 32% say it's pretty much exaggerated speculation. 62% say scientific fact. So I took those 12 and I'll show you really quick. It's the same pattern every time. Small farm protection, first time ever we've done it. There are the 2 statements. Protect them, don't protect them. 3 times more likely to say government should protect small farms. What did I do down here? I don't think it would surprise you that amongst the conservatives versus the people in the middle versus the liberals, the people who self-identify as liberal, 80% of them, 79% said that. But even amongst the people who say I'm a conservative, 66% say that. Why did I turn all 3 of those blue? Because they all took, the majority said, what I think most people would perceive as government bigger, government protection, government helping. All 3 groups. That was interesting to Larry now. If I go to the next one, last year 62% said pro-gun right. That went up to 68% this year. 68 to 28. 68% of the people we spoke with said this: the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to own guns, and that should not be compromised by laws such as the New York State SAFE Act. Only 28% said gun violence is out of control and some gun regulation similar to it is necessary. This is within the margin of error, essentially saying it's a 2-to-1 ratio, 2 years in a row. Look at the other 2 counties. There is more support for pro-gun rights in Lewis County than either of the other 2. If you say you're conservative, there's an 85% chance you say statement A. If you say you're a liberal, it now turns to a 65% that you say statement B. I'm using that same pattern on every one of these. Climate change. Look at how speculation versus proven science. In your county, it's 62 to 32, essentially a 2-to-1 rate saying it's proven science. And amongst the people in the middle that don't say either conservative or liberal, they tend to go toward the proven science. As compared to, let me go back a slide, they tended to say pro-gun rights. Observations we see. President Trump is good, President Trump is not good for our country. Look what happened last year, 61, I think that is. This year it's 59. Essentially, same result. It's a 2-to-1 ratio being pro-Trump versus anti-Trump. And your county is more pro-Trump than either of the 2 other counties. Notice St. Lawrence, the blues. That's the only one where this bad becomes higher than this good. That's where Larry's going in a couple weeks. And, but please notice that if you call yourself conservative, 87% chance you say Trump is good. If you call yourself liberal, 75% chance you say it's bad. However, what I really want you to remember is those 2 together are not as big as the middle group. So what's the middle group say? It's really close. 48 pro-Trump, 41 not pro-Trump. Clearly, that's why when you merge them all together in the county, it's 59-32. Choosing abortion is a woman's right. Abortion is morally wrong. So, woman's right, morally wrong. I have to say that this one probably surprised me last year. And then we confirm it happened again this year. And notice in all 3 counties. And notice that what happens with that in the middle group. And I think you start to see why in this political season people tend to take a look at the crosstabs. You kind of can predict what the conservatives are going to say. You kind of very likely can predict what the liberals are going to say. But what about that 53% that doesn't self-identify? That's what you have in your report the ability to do. And notice the consistency amongst the 3 counties. Federal income taxes either pretty much only benefit the rich or significantly benefited all of us. Notice that in St. Lawrence County, they're more likely to say benefited the rich than your 2. But in your county, 52 to 32, look, that's almost exact from year to year. And my eyes would be trained on, what about that middle group? Because you kind of can see where the red and blue would go in the other 2 groups. So this is the first time we ever asked it. I think this one might have come from Larry Knott. It's been a big talking point on a statewide basis, and we said providing free tuition for state college. Good. Providing free tuition for state college. Bad. And in your county, 2-to-1 ratio almost. Good. Not bad. Even amongst...
why you put that in there.
What's that?
I wonder why you put that in there, being state
Curious. Curious what people think about it. So, even amongst the people who are conservative, it's pretty close. Look at the difference as you go politically more toward the left, of course we would call that. So, I'm almost at the end of this. We asked the question of, it's wrong for adults to be romantically involved. Same question as last year. It's all right for them to be romantically involved with adults of the opposite sex. And for 2 years in a row, this is saying, all right, 52 to 30, whatever that is, 6 or 8. I can't quite read it up there. 36. If you look in the counties, the other 2 counties have higher rates than 52. You were a higher rate than 52 last year, but it's still 52 to 38. And you can see if you start to look at, I would be shocked if this column wasn't highlighting a red number and this highlight wasn't highlighting a blue number. It's that middle group that's 53% of your population that we wonder, what are their feelings? This is, the United States needs to maintain a strong leadership role in the world political and economic order. We call that globalism. The United States needs to refocus its attention on its own people. We call it take care of yourself. We call that nationalism. And look how close year after year, and look how county after county. Essentially, people are more interested in take care of ourselves than the world's strong leadership role in all 3 counties. And by the way, notice this one. That's the one question that even if you call yourself liberal, you'd still tend to say B. That one's pretty unanimously and uniformly throughout Lewis County. So we asked responsibility for healthcare. Big debated issue right now. Is it government responsibility and societal, or is it individual? And you're still 50, whatever that is, to 44, 52-44, which is a lower rate of saying government responsibility than the other two counties. However, still more government than non-government. We asked the question, only this year for you folks. We've asked it in the other two counties. To maintain and improve border security, our country should build a physical wall along the entire border. To maintain and improve border security, our country should use other available technologies and not build a wall. And what is the case? Do not build a wall versus build a wall. If you're conservative, clearly you say build a wall. If you're liberal, oh my God. 90% of them say don't. Why does that become 50? Because look at the group who say I'm neither one of those. You can see what they tend to be more supporting. And we also asked the amount of legal immigration. And my 3 students were supposed to focus on the word legal in their voice. And I heard them doing it. The amount of legal immigration allowed currently in our country is too high or it's not too high. That's the difference. And you can see that should be reduced 50% to 42%. This is the one that is really essentially a dead heat. This one, there wasn't a dominant opinion on it. And then finally the last one. Now, I don't want you to think that I'm just going crazy on here with this last question. We asked it in Lewis County in 2008. And I dug it out of the archives. And 11 years have gone by, and we know it's being debated a whole bunch, so why not learn about what the community thinks? So right there is, the question is, should marijuana be legalized for medicinal purposes only, legalized for both medicinal and recreational, or do not legalize at all? What did I highlight over here? What's the most common answer amongst each of those 3 groups? So I, on this graph, said medicinal only. It went down. This is you 11 years ago in green. This is you now in blue. Completely legalized. Went from 26 or 8, whatever that is, up to 42 over the last 11 years. Do not legalize at all. Went from 33 down to 23. Thank you, up there. And what happened did I put the wrong graph in there, Larry? No, we did it in Jefferson, not St. Lawrence, right? So there are the Jefferson County results from last spring. It's amazingly parallel with what's going on here. So if you look at that, there are 13 issues that, what did I just do? I summarized these 13 and I picked the most common response. And so that red means it would have been saying Trump is good. That blue means it would have been saying Trump is bad. What do I see as the academic and the researcher? What I see loud and clear is amongst the conservatives, 12 out of 13, they picked the choice, most commonly, that you would associate and think. The only one they didn't was protect the farms, first one I showed you. Amongst the people who say I'm liberal, they picked the blue one, most common. The only one they didn't is the globalism versus nationalism, protect our own, they said. Here's what it is when I pulled off those graphs, when you merge all of them together, and I want you to look at red versus blue. I can't ignore the idea that public sentiment in general in your county is largely driven by that 53% that doesn't identify, that don't pick either one. And what I see is there are their dominant opinions. And I'll leave that for you to think about. I don't know how that affects your governance here, but I know we finish with, I threw this slide in there because our question was, do you strongly A, somewhat B, or strongly B? We did not need to ask strongly or somewhat. If somebody thinks that Trump is good, they strongly think Trump is good. Look at that. If somebody thinks he's bad, they strongly think he's bad. And I think we would be ignoring what's absolutely factual in our community, in our society right now, that this is the one that has to do with women's reproductive rights. If you say women's choice, you strongly say it. If you say pro-life, you strongly say it. And that was true. I just picked these 2 out of the blue. It was all throughout it. And this question, generally speaking, what would you say the direction things are heading in the country? That's St. Lawrence County, the right direction. That's St. Lawrence County, the wrong direction. That's you. This is saying for the whole country. What do you think? 42% say the country's going in the right direction. 43% say it's going in the wrong direction. We followed up with this question. What about your own county? This is my stop and say congratulations, people. That your 539 people were more than willing to say on a nationwide basis, look at your green bars. not so much. But for what's going on in my county right now, that's almost a 4-to-1 ratio. The same group of people are 4 times more likely to say the right direction in your county than the wrong direction. Here's where we finish. These are the ones that, according to our dialogue with Joe and Ryan and Eric and my board and the leadership here, the ones that I don't presume to know the details of how you would, but I do know that there was a higher education center built recently. And I do know that that's something that you had a great role in. And so I would agree that this is a government service because you had a great role in that. We've been asking this question, access to higher education, since 2009. That spike didn't just happen from random chance. What I want you to see is amongst the community, they clearly are saying access to higher education is on an upward trend. Thank goodness, with all the efforts you're putting into it, if that wasn't perceived that way. So that's a government service. However, before we get too backslapping, that 58% in your county is still lower than the other 2 counties. They obviously have colleges sitting right within the borders. Next government service, availability of care for the elderly. I do not presume to know how that would be. Ryan, bail me out here.
Well, you could think of it as some of the services the OFA provides. You could think of it as the skilled nursing that we have at the hospital. Could be assisted living. We only have Brookfield for assisted living. So could be any of those things. Care for the elderly, I guess.
I would look at what's going on right there. It hopped out at us because that clearly is. That intersection says that one, the fair and poor went up. That one, the excellent or good, went down in a beyond just a random chance rate.
Do you think, and we didn't get the chance to talk about this, but do you think because the demographics are moving more towards having more elderly people in the community, this is now amplifying that voice?
It potentially could, but it would be slight because we weight the data, right? Age, education, gender, geography. We actually weight the data to make sure that we don't overrepresent Lowville Village residents. Because way back in the day when it was almost all landlines we were getting like 30% of our sample was from the village of Lowville. You go to the census website and the village of Lowville is only about 15% of the county. So we had to wait for that. We had to adjust it, and we do. So Ryan, the only impact of having more elderly in our sample would be that if the census says you now have more elderly people in your county, we've weighted toward that new target. However, please notice that your county residents are still happier with the availability of care for the elderly than either of the other 2 counties. That's why the report is so thick. So the next one is childcare. Notice the stability. We've only asked this 4 times. You can't get much more exact. 3 years in a row, and then all of a sudden this year, whoa. Notice that says availability. That doesn't say quality. That doesn't say cost. That doesn't say proximity. That doesn't say, it says availability of it. And that's what we've asked. However, that would be hard to ignore. Ryan, how might that be?
We have, this is what our employers tell us constantly, right? Even the hospital tells us they can't keep people, especially young parents, because we don't have a lot of childcare. We just pretty much have hand in hand in a couple other spotty locations, but we're definitely in need of giving them some support, right?
And the employment's been higher. The employment's been high, so there's more complaints about not having the daycare.
That's it.
So those were the 2 that Larry and I saw that maybe didn't go the direction you hoped, but that's why you collect this data, to try to get reality. Here's a couple that, policing and crime control, we did not measure last year because we shortened the survey. This is on an every other year basis. It would be hard for me to ignore the idea that A, attitude about policing and crime control has been that high before, but that's a 10% jump, and B, it's higher than any of the other 2 counties. Certainly, I would think a good thing. And then that's the one I highlighted a half an hour ago. That's a question that we've asked. I feel that my local elected county officials represent my concerns effectively. And so you can see the agree kind of went up as we did it 4 years in a row, and then 2 years we didn't ask it. But that's again irrefutable. 55 is almost double 32. I wouldn't let my students say it's almost double 32. That would be bad rounding, but it's a lot bigger than 32. And I thought that was well to put in there. Bernsey, I don't know where this came from. I have no idea how to use it. Larry, it's all on you. I don't know how to use this thing. I don't know. God, I hope it isn't. So, go for it, Larry, because I don't dare hear the thing. Now, before you answer it, this is the only open-ended question in our entire survey, and you young ladies and Ryan must remember asking, what's the largest issue facing the residents in Lewis County right now? And somebody might say, my neighbor's dog. You know, it's open-ended, and you have all kinds of stuff like that. And we tried to delete out how many times they said Ryan P. shit, but those are broad. So anyways, who wants to? Ron, you know if nobody pipes in here, I'm going to force you to do this. What do you think is the most common answer that they said to the largest issue facing the residents of your county?
I don't know, I'm going to say employment. Okay. Had to say something, right?
I was so hoping you would hear that. Okay, so
Thanks for changing that so I wasn't embarrassed.
you've always been so
Real
nice.
handy with that clicker.
You've always been so nice to me. Tell me what else you think that they don't like. Just the biggest issue.
I don't know, Ryan's saying I know, but
You brought it up during our
bring up a
sessions
lot
with
of
Chris.
Do we
don't
need to
always
get
listen.
audience participation
Yeah,
here?
let's do it.
Okay, what do you think is another issue that would say yes?
Housing.
Housing. Uh-oh. Okay, so who else? Now after you saw that, you probably don't dare. Taxes. Oh yeah, that's on there. And two more.
help me out.
You had childcare.
Oh, I heard healthcare.
And healthcare.
Oh yeah, drinking and drugs.
Oh, and I just heard it. What? You only had one X. You know your community. So you can see that adds up to 61, 73. There are other low ones, but I knew we'd be here all night if I had every single one of those graphs be this. But we like our Family Feud. Is this me or you now? I'm gonna try to have it be me. So that's the graph that shows, and I know that's small. That's economy and jobs was the largest. Drug and alcohol related. However, notice 2 years ago. Notice 2 years ago. It's number 2. But notice what it was 2 years ago. And then down here are the healthcare and the taxes. That's what jobs was in 2010. In 2010, to that open-ended question, over 65% of the people said that's the biggest issue. That's why we're not struggling with the idea of some of those early ones that said, you know, my personal financial situation is getting a little bit better. Because if this contradicted it, it's not contradicting it, but it also is showing that, you know what, it's risen back up from what it was 2 years ago. And all I want to say to you before I open it up for questions is these three young folks that are here, Monica Reed from Natural Bridge, and Amanda Pease from Hammond, and Ryan Aubertine from Jamal-ish, right? They were all a part of all of this. So if you had any question at all about what's it like to get Ron Burns on the phone, they would be the ones that you'd want to ask, not me. Or what they had to do, believe it or not, is they had to do analysis, just like you saw that I just did, and hand it in to me and get graded on it. What they've never had is a chance to come and see that somebody else actually hopefully cares about it. But if you had a question, it doesn't just have to be for Larry. It doesn't have to be for me. It could be for them. Or, Ryan, if you wanted to facilitate what you want to facilitate with. We made it through in less than an hour.
Yeah, that's good. So this year I talked to Coach before the presentation about getting right into the data so that gives you guys some time to talk about it. We've talked a lot about governance and mission and vision this year. How do you think some of this data, can affect the way we spend money, the way we make decisions? Is there anything that stuck out to you as something that we've been talking about? The solar, we've been talking a lot about, solar's coming up as something that's happening with, our farmers. We've got some farmers that love to give up some of their land for solar. We've got others that depend on that. Knowing what the community thinks is a big deal.
For myself, I need to look through that more thoroughly to get a better answer to your question. But I got a question for Joel, if that's okay.
He always does. All right, do I need to sit down?
Is this a surprise to you, Joel?
No, it is not. You always have had one.
Tell us more about the cross-section. Age and location. You give a little more detail on that.
I absolutely can because of Larry. What you see right there is, if I look up at the top, I think I see 105 pages this study is. And so, Larry, if you keep scrolling down, it's right in the first sections on methodology. And there's going to be a table on right in the neighborhood of page 7 and 8. Right there where it says demographics of the sample. And so there's the gender distribution. So if you stop and look at that, I love your questions because this is what people need to. My poor students heard this so many times. It's called garbage in, garbage out. You know, if all we did is put this as a link somewhere on the Lewis County website and wait for whoever's motivated to go to the Lewis County website to fill it out, that is garbage we'd be collecting, as compared to us reaching out and randomly sampling them as best we can. And what you can see is this is 50-50 male-female in this distribution. Why? Because that's what your county is. You can see it's 12% in the age group of 18 to 29. That's a little low. If you read the really small stuff up there, it says the census says that it's about 19% of your adult population is in the age group 18 to 29. But go down and you can see only 16% of people are 70 or older. Why? Because that's what the census says is true for your
Or they lied.
county. Pardon me?
Or they lied.
Well, we never know whether they told the truth or not, but sometimes we bury a second question in there to try to catch you in a lie, but we can never catch you. By the way, did any of you get called?
My husband.
Yes. Thank you so much for answering the phone. Did anybody fill it out online? Did anybody get that email? None of the 158 people filled it out online, which we were really thrilled. So anyways, there is a distribution. Now you mentioned towns. If Larry slides down to there, that's the number of people. So as soon as someone who represents Casterland thinks that you're going to be able to come up with a very precise estimate of Casterland, you need to realize there are 11 people from Casterland and 4 from Constableville. I didn't say that that's all they are. But if you look up at Lowville Village, 72 people, but we weighted it so that it represents 13% of the population because that's what the census says is true. We do not want to over-represent having everybody who filled it out live in the village of Lowville. So if you look at those last 2 columns, those are the percent in our sample and percent that the census says. Are we perfect spot on each time? No. But do we ever miss by very much? I've been doing this for 35 years, and it still always amazes me that we get 400 people to answer the phone, and I look at it and go, son of a gun. Their age, their gender, their geography parallels the county. I shouldn't say son of a gun. After a while, I ought to figure it out. But it still always surprises me, this central limit theorem idea, that it works. It's be patient. Now, it doesn't work if you only sample 5 people. But if you sample 500, flip a coin 500 times and see how close you get to 50-50. You're going to be real close.
So, Monica, how long would you be talking to somebody when you called?
The survey took about 7 minutes. So
Really?
Yep. So, yeah, and most of the people, they really liked the questions. They were different enough that it kept them interested. And they were usually very engaging with us on the phone.
They appreciated getting called?
Yeah, they were usually really excited about it. And to hear that they were students from JCC calling and wanting to know their opinion about it.
I have to interrupt you. Monica and your mom sitting there. Monica's mom had me for a professor. She told me too. So we have the multi-generation. Monica worked so hard at it. She was on the phone nonstop. She did not use the headset, right, Mom? That Monica got our first injury ever in the call center. Am I lying? She had a sore elbow the next day that she came. Did you go to the doctor?
I did eventually, yeah.
This is our first workers' comp claim I thought we were going to have with that. God loved Monica, but everybody would talk to her. You have any questions for Amanda or Ryan?
I'd ask them the same question.
For me, it took about 7 minutes, 7 to 10. They even go further in depth to explain themselves, but they really did love the survey to let their voice heard.
Did you get any cranky ones?
I bet Ryan got more cranky ones than the ladies because there is some gender stuff going on there. There's no question. It's true. It's true that they are more agreeable to a young lady on the phone. Don't deny it. You are. Okay. It's been years since I dragged you in anything.
I'd be cranky if you called.
All right, I think there's probably our time. I just want to finish seriously by thanking you. I say to our college president, our trustees, and everybody, the other counties need to be like Lewis County. The other counties need to be like Lewis County. Larry is trying to get that board of legislature to actually show up and have a pulse. Never mind. Never mind.